Iraq in chaos, a political earthquake in Washington, the Bowe Bergdahl controversy, and Miss USA on rape culture. I'm Taylor Kinsler, and this is the Square Circle. Hello and welcome to the Square Circle. I'm your host, Taylor Kinsler. Joining us today are journalist Gregory Clay, Democratic consultant Matthews Pearson, and Jason Russell of Economics 21. Good afternoon.
Thanks. Good afternoon.
Thanks for being here. Our first topic today is the situation in Iraq. 4 years after U.S. forces withdrew and 5 months after al-Qaeda retook Fallujah, the city of Mosul has fallen into al-Qaeda's hands. Baghdad appears to be the next target. The Iraqi government doesn't appear to be capable of defending itself against the terrorists. So, should the U.S. intervene? If so, how far should we be willing to get involved? Would anyone like to start?
Well, I'll jump in. Certainly the Iraqi army doesn't appear capable right now, but they will certainly be capable of defending Baghdad. So, while we could have an island in a failed state, as it were, they will be stopped at the gates, as it were, of Baghdad. I also think that something that is getting lost in all this, whether we should intervene or not, is the terrorists or ISIS is taking over towns on the border with Iran. And they are making announcements that Shiites are infidels. And Iran is a Shiite state, and they will not take kindly to people murdering their sect of Islam on their border. So there's a very real possibility that rather than the U.S. intervening, Iran will intervene in a very weird way on our behalf.
And President Obama today on the White House lawn, before he and Michelle left a Marine One helicopter to go to North Dakota to the Indian reservation, announced that he will not have boots on the ground there. And it appears that the United States is going to do something. And the aircraft carriers are heading to the Persian Gulf, and it seems that the belief is that there will probably be airstrikes. But like President Obama said, he gathered information from his military advisors and his national security team, and he's examining his options, and it'll take several days before he does something. So I guess now we're in wait and see mode in terms of what the United States will do.
Yeah, I'm very pleased that the president came out and said flat out that there's not going to be any boots on the ground. Part of the issue is that ISIS is currently seizing former U.S. weapons that we had sent during the Iraqi conflict. And those are ranged from big things like helicopters and Humvees right on down to heavy machine guns. And it's very concerning that those are now in the hands of these violent rebels that are clearly killing people that are innocent and are not enemy combatants. And I think it's very concerning that the prospect of sending even more weapons that we could send there that might just also be taken over as well.
Yeah, I agree with the president's statement that no boots on the ground. Unfortunately, that circumscribes our ability to hit back. Everybody's talking about airstrikes and precision strikes and all these things, and the U.S. has the ability from manned aircraft or unmanned aircraft to deliver on very small targets. Unfortunately, that requires boots on the ground. So maybe there is in Obama's statement, he means very specifically combat troops and military. So maybe we're going to see CIA or something of that nature.
Special
But
forces.
there's not any great way of doing this. Airstrikes are hard. They must be targeted very precisely, especially in a situation like this where they're taking over towns, civilians are involved. It would be an absolute horrible thing if the U.S. were to intervene with airstrikes and kill any number, even a small number of civilians. It would inflame the situation. It would make it worse than as terrible as it is. So, unfortunately, I think we're very limited in our options.
I agree. It's kind of a situation where you're looking for which option is least bad, which is the less worst one. But yeah, like you said, there's obviously lots of consequences to airstrikes as well. Situations like that can really embolden terrorists to just keep fighting harder. And when you end up accidentally killing innocent civilians, that can help them recruit family members of the deceased and just strengthening their ranks even further.
Well, I'd like to remind our audience at home that you can submit your questions to our guests through our website, www.publicsquare.net, and we'll answer as many as we can live on air towards the end of the show. We're going to move on to our next topic. There was a shocking political development in Washington this week as House Majority Leader Eric Cantor lost his Republican primary to Tea Party newcomer David Brat. Commentators disagree about what exactly caused this stunning upset. Matthews Pearson, do you think you know the causes?
I think there was at the very start and leading up to the election a great deal of talk about immigration, and that was the issue that we heard the most about. And I'm sure that played a role. But if you see the exit polling, 72% of voters supported some kind of immigration reform, and I'm sure that is a range that is very wide in what they consider immigration reform. Many of those voters probably considered a 30-foot wall immigration reform. So, but nonetheless, I don't think it was immigration that everybody was talking about in the lead up that caused this. I think Cantor wasn't paying attention to his district. He was involved in being leader. He was enjoying his time in Washington. He wasn't even in the district for a good portion of Election Day, and that's just, you in a way deserve to lose if you're going to do that. His pollster messed up, but primaries are incredibly hard to poll, especially a primary of this nature. So his team was caught flat-footed, but in all, it was Cantor taking his district for granted. He was underwater on his approval rating, even amongst Republicans, 43 to 49. The district as a whole, which I'm sure had at least some Democratic crossover, nothing of the lines of Project Chaos or something of that nature, but the district as a whole had him as a 30% approval rating. I mean, that's just abysmal. And for him to watch this primary coming up and see his approval rating, which he had to have known, even if the other polling was off, and not be down there doing everything he could on the ground, it just goes to show politics is local, and you can't be majority leader if you're going to forget your district.
Even as a Republican with a favorable review of Eric Cantor, I tend to agree with you. From the anecdotes that I've heard of his voter contact and campaigning in his district, did not seem like he was paying attention. It seemed like he was floating and just assuming that he was going to win. And, a lot of pundits are trying to explain this now, but I think most of all, none of them saw it coming. So it's kind of hard to take that advice from people who didn't see it coming. But I think the effect long term isn't going to last too long. It seems like something that will maybe last throughout the rest of the primary season, but come general election time, I don't think it's going to have a huge effect anymore on politics.
I think this is I don't think this is actually showing of a larger trend and a so-called Tea Party comeback. Everybody's talking about Tea Party back, and yes, he was a Tea Partier, but Eric Cantor is no, moderate Republican. The idea that he was, some liberal and the Tea Party got him. He was an establishment because he was the majority leader, but he was the conservative representative, he was the one who voiced the Tea Party views in leadership. So this isn't a Tea Party comeback, and I think the establishment is going to continue to win in primaries, and in leadership, the establishment has gone right back to a Republican order. McCarthy is going to be leader, and we've got a bit of a fight for the whip position, but it's going to follow a fairly regular order, and it will be mainstream Republicans, establishment, taking over and keep marching, and I think rolling up more primary wins.
But wasn't he also accused of trying to reach across the aisle and trying to help President Obama?
I think it was
some deals and things like that, and of course, in the Republican world, that's not too cool to even be thought of reaching across the aisle to President Obama. And he also was accused of being too ambitious. He wanted John Boehner's job and all this, and there's all this talk that, as you were saying earlier, he forgot his base, or was too arrogant, et cetera, and then all the stuff about him spending $166,000 on steakhouses.
I don't think that's really out of the norm.
It's
It's actually,
but when
it's
you're,
as odd as that sounds.
But when your opponent supposedly spends only $138,000 total on his campaign, that's what caused all the uproar about the steakhouse thing. And now it's the butt of jokes, et cetera. But Eric Cantor, the whole thing. When I first heard it, I was stunned. I remember I was watching.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was watching the Spurs Miami Heat basketball game at a sports bar, and the scroll came across CNN on another big screen TV. I'm going, what? It blew me away. In fact,
it did do that.
Yeah, it blew me away so much I stopped watching the game. So it
You
had to be
it was
serious.
a big deal.
That's right.
I was at a dinner actually, and 500 people, and you could hear it ripple across the room. It absolutely is an earthquake, and it is shocking. He's the first majority leader to ever lose in a primary. But as I said before, this isn't a Tea Party comeback. This isn't immigration. Immigration was certainly a part. I'm sure that motivated a bunch of voters, but talk radio isn't going to go out and win a bunch of primaries for the rest of the season.
I think when you look at how little David Brat did spend, it goes to show that it was more of an anti-Cantor thing more than
Absolutely.
a pro-David Brat thing. Yeah.
Now, I know that you said short term, you don't really think that this will affect the Republican Party, but long term, in regards to the way that this turned out, do you think it'll have any effect on?
I think it will. I think there will be lessons learned that may be the incorrect lessons, but some of them are important, and it is pay attention to your district and don't pay attention to what leadership says and what leadership does and what the mainstream party needs or what the national party is, what's good for the national party. Immigration reform would be very helpful to the national party. It is probably crucial to their 2016 prospects. But if you're a Republican member of the House, and if you look at your district, if you're in tune with your district is majority white. All of them are. Every single Republican has a majority white district. They have few Hispanic voters, and they have almost no. I think this seeing 72% for immigration reform surprised me, and I think if you polled a lot of the other districts, you're not going to see numbers that high. And the first rule of being an elected official is to get elected. So the lesson will be, it might not be, the Tea Party is scary, and they will beat me. But it is keep myself elected, and leadership might want me to do this. They might want to compromise, but I need to be home in my district, and I need to pay attention to my district. And if that means bucking the national party, I will absolutely do it. So I think we'll see Congress grinding even more to a halt if that's possible. I don't think they can go reverse, but maybe they'll give it a shot. And it's going to hurt the Republican Party. There will be more infighting. I think they've been really lucky to avoid it in the leadership races, but long term it's going to cause some problems.
All right, well, moving on. Another story still in the news this week is the ongoing controversy over Bowe Bergdahl. As more information comes out about Bergdahl's backstory and the prisoners who were swapped for him, the Obama administration has been on the defensive. Gregory Clay, all in all, do you think this was a good trade?
Yes and no. The yes part is because Bowe Bergdahl is back home. The no part and the iffy part is this slow drip of information comes out daily about the guy's who were involved in the trade. The Taliban guys, of course. Fox News had a report yesterday saying that one of the guys was involved in the September 11th attacks. And Fox News also reported that one of the guys was involved in the killing of the first American troop in Afghanistan. And they interviewed his daughter, who's 22 years old now. At the time, she was 9. And that's what makes it so difficult. And if these guys return to the field and start killing Americans, Barack Obama again is going to catch hell.
Well, I'm not. I agree that the Taliban who have been released in this trade are amongst the worst of the worst, and we can debate: are they evil or really, really evil? And that doesn't matter. These guys are bad, and putting them out in the field is not a great idea. That said, they're out in a place now where we can kill them. So that should be remembered. I think John Kerry pointed that out. They're going into an area of the world where we fly drones all the time, and we know where they are. So these guys are probably a lot less safe now than they were ever before. So yes, they're out on the battlefield, but it's a battlefield,
right.
and that should be remembered. And you're right. It's great that he's home, and that should be really what we're focusing on here. The U.S. does not leave people behind. We still fly POW MIA flags from the Vietnam War, and and we probably will for another 50 years. The U.S. brings people home, and the idea that we don't negotiate with terrorists is a fallacy. We don't publicly negotiate face to face. If Jason and I are, we don't do that. But there are back channels, and when people are kidnapped, ransom payments are made.
Behind the scenes.
It has happened. It will continue to happen. It's unfortunate that it's been so public, and the Taliban, of course, has come out and said, well, now that we know we can negotiate,
we'll capture some more.
We'll capture some
more. And do the same thing.
That wasn't the idea that this is a new idea.
Yeah.
Oh, we could capture U.S. soldiers. They didn't come up with that with Bowe Bergdahl. This has always been something they were trying to do. That's how they got him. So.
Right.
I think at some point, though, you have to examine at what cost did it take to get him back. There were stories that 3 soldiers or more may have died trying to rescue him, and at the point you're 3 soldiers dying to save 1 soldier. What's the trade-off there? I think you have to look at that, and I think certainly you need to consider that now that the deal is complete, he needs to be a lot more transparent about what happened in that respect, and do a lot more investigation.
Once he's had his time, he should be allowed to reintegrate. The man may have walked off, and he may have deserted even. But people have deserted in every war America has ever fought. It literally, every single one, even the small conflicts, people have deserted. And people may have died in the operation out to search for him. But the people dying in search of a single comrade or a single person who's hurt, whether they be Afghan or Iraqi or any of these other nationalities where we've had conflicts, that's something that actually is very common, and these men and women serve knowing they may give their lives to rescue a single person. He might have been wrong in doing what he did, and if that is the case, he will be court-martialed. They have said that will happen. There'll be an investigation. So.
But they've also said that some people are saying that he likely will not be imprisoned, because some people are saying that 5 years in captivity with the Taliban is enough punishment. I mean, he'll get the dishonorable discharge.
It will be up to a military
or whatever, right?
So.
And basically told to go away. But going back to something you said earlier, which is true. In one way, there's so many ways you can look at this. In one way, perhaps it's good these guys are out, because as you said, now you can kill them. See, as long as they were at Guantanamo, you can kill these guys. But now you can. And now, the United States, do you think the United States is not going to go specifically looking for these guys and say, okay, they're out now. There's no restrictions anymore, and specifically pursue them. See what I'm saying? I mean, will the United States do that? What are the chances of that happening?
Well, if they are part of the Taliban, they're part of a terrorist network. The country spends a great deal of time and resources and blood and treasure tracking and killing terrorists. So the idea that these 5 would be somehow off limits it can't be the case. Certainly right now they have a year maybe of grace if they adhere to the agreement. We're not going to launch drone strikes in Qatar. That certainly won't happen. But if they sneak off, if they move to Afghanistan or Syria or Iraq or one of these places there's a conflict, they'll only be able to stay underground for so long.
Right. Well, hopefully they'll be under surveillance.
I assume they are right now.
You have to figure that.
We've certainly given a lot of money and resources to to Qatar for their intelligence services.
Right.
I think another component to look at as well, I think recently some of Bowe's Facebook posts were released, and it kind of expressed his emotional struggle with the idea of war and his mission in general. My question is, do you think that maybe is a sign of mental illness, that he was trying to say that he needed help, or was it an opportunity for him to find a way to get out of deserting if he did do that?
I think that's an interesting topic, and I think that's something not just the military, but American culture in general needs to work with, is better ways to deal with mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that we're well qualified to deal with. And, as kind of the leader in cultural openness and tolerance and acceptance, that's something that we need to be having a more open discussion about, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this before in the show, with mental health and the state of mental health in this country and how we deal with it, and it's really shameful, and more needs to be done. This is a bipartisan issue, and everybody disagrees on how to do it, but maybe he is mentally ill, and he needs help, and certainly he can get that, whether that's in a hospital in Texas where he is now, or in a hospital in Idaho where he's from, or in an Army brig somewhere. He'll get the help he needs. But again, whether he's mentally ill or whether he deserted should not have any effect on whether we went to get him. Yeah. We help many people from many nations who don't fight for us, and we lose many men and many women. I personally have lost a friend who went to rescue Afghani children, 2 Afghani children. How do they help us? But he went and got on a helicopter, and he and everyone on the helicopter perished. And we don't say, oh, we traded 8 guys for what? Right. We say, what, they did their duty, and it's horrible that we lost them, but that's how you fight war.
All right, well, finally, our last topic is controversy at the Miss USA pageant. Miss Nevada Nia Sanchez, who went on to win the title of Miss USA that night, answered a question about rape on college campuses by suggesting that women learn self-defense as a way to protect themselves from rape. She said, quote, "I think more awareness is very important so women can learn how to protect themselves. Myself, as a 4th-degree black belt, I learned from a young age that you need to be confident and be able to defend yourself. And I think that's something that we should start to implement for women." So this ignited a firestorm on Twitter, with some saying that it absolves men of responsibility for their actions. Jason, what do you make of her comments?
So she also mentioned that colleges really sweep this issue under the rug, which is certainly true, because for decades, campus security forces have been trained to keep small offenses like drugs and alcohol or small fights away from local law enforcement, because they don't want kids to go to jail or have to pay hefty fines that they don't really deserve. But the problem with that is that it also has trained these forces to keep legitimate issues like this under the rug and from the law enforcement where it should be. So you get a lot of rape cases that end up at student tribunals or in front of campus administrators who are trained at running schools. They're not trained at investigating these issues. And that's a big issue that she mentioned that I think gets lost on in some of this. But I think she did make some good comments about self-defense. So when you have burglaries, with that issue, you say you should better protect your home. You should not. No one says we need to teach burglars not to steal. Everyone knows stealing is wrong. Everyone knows rape is wrong. It's not an issue of just saying we need to teach rapists that rape is bad. They know it's bad, and self-defense is one way. An education of men and women isn't also another way to do it. There's several different avenues that we can go down and should go down.
I agree with what Jason's saying. He's saying that your house is broken into, and people say you should protect your house. I have a alarm in my house, and it's not rape, but no one mugs the 6'5" muscle head walking down the street, or the really mean, tough looking guy. So certainly rape is an issue on campuses, and you said it's been swept under the rug for far too long, and it, in a way, this controversy shows that it's coming out from underneath the rug, and we're talking about it, and it's an issue. But she didn't say men can continue to run around and rape and do whatever they want. She said one thing women can do, like I have done, is learn to protect myself.
She has 30 seconds to answer that question. I mean, she couldn't possibly.
I think that is women who are confident and look like they can defend themselves. Maybe they can still be raped, and certainly someone should say that that's therefore possible, but you are probably less likely, and I think women, as part of this problem, we are not going to stop the problem of rape. It is a great goal, and it is rampant. It is being increasing on campuses, whether it's reporting or actual instances. Something needs to be done about it, but that's going to take time, and that's unfortunate, but for a woman to protect herself and learn to defend herself shouldn't be something that is looked down upon or controversial, that a woman is able to defend herself. I can defend myself from a mugger, and no one says, well, Matt, you shouldn't say that. You should, tell the mugger to put his gun down. Yeah. That's just, there's nothing wrong with women defending themselves.
Well, I think in particular, too, in any type of pageantry, feminists or people are always looking to jump upon whoever gave that answer and try to find something wrong with it or take it out of context, which I think why this issue is even here in the first place.
Yeah, well then too, feminists, you bring up feminists, feminists for the most part would be against the pageant in the first place. Let's be real. Forget about the, not just about the rape thing, but just the fact that women are in a pageant, showing their beauty, and walking around in bathing suits, et cetera. Feminists would be against that, for the most part, and so it doesn't surprise me, about the situation. But still, Miss USA is getting much unfair blame, because as Matt says, Miss USA is just offering another helpful solution, to a major problem on college campuses, and she never said, well, just give guys, free will. She's saying, it will help you to be able to protect yourself. Just like a lot of women nowadays who feel threatened in whatever situation are going out and buying guns, to protect themselves, and because there's so much violent crime these days. I don't blame women for doing that, because regardless of what the FBI stats say and what the police stats say about crime declining, I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy the fact that crime is supposedly declining in this country. I don't believe that for a minute. And if a woman feels that she needs to arm herself with a gun, that's her free will. That's her prerogative. And if she feels she should take judo classes or karate classes or kickboxing classes, because if a woman, a lot of women wear heels, 5-inch heels or 4-inch heels or whatever, and you wearing stilettos, and kickboxing, stiletto on a guy, hey, you can do a hell of a lot of damage. A stiletto can be a lethal weapon, and there's a lot of things you can do, and also don't wait for somebody to sit around and debate about it. If you feel threatened, then do something about it yourself. Because if you are killed or whatever, hey, nobody's gonna help you then. It's over. You should take precautions that you deem necessary if you feel that you are in a fearful situation.
And I think regardless of the interpretation, it certainly brought up a necessary dialogue about rape culture in America right now.
Absolutely, and whether women are defending themselves or learning to defend themselves or not, the controversy does, and people are absolutely right, there is this other side of it. And something needs to be done about it, especially at college campuses, but altogether, there more needs to be done about this, but women should still be allowed to defend themselves.
Right.
Yes. I think it's interesting. Part of the issue, I mean, it is something that needs to be talked about and be dealt with, but I think part of the, but I think there's been a lot more progress on it than we realize. When you look at the statistics, there's a statistic thrown around that 1 in 5 women in college are victims of rape. But Christina Hoff Sommers, and that comes from a CDC study, but Christina Hoff Sommers at the American Enterprise Institute, she looked at that study and found a lot of problems with their methodology. She looked at the questions that they were asking, and one of the questions that they asked, have you been a part of alcohol or drug facilitated penetration? And if the answer was yes, then that counts as rape. Even though that's such a vague question, alcohol or drug facilitated, that could be anything from, I hooked up with someone on a Saturday night after 2 drinks, and they're my boyfriend or girlfriend. That's clearly very consensual. And so I think that there is a lot of underreporting, obviously, but I don't think that these statistics, the main statistics that are out there are telling the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. Well, let's take some questions from our viewers. So the first question that we have is from Charles Poole, and he said, is Iraq becoming a proxy war between Iran and al-Qaeda, just like Syria?
I don't think it has become. Is not to say that it won't. I believe that we should, while Iran may step in and stop ISIS, and that could protect the Iraqi state, it is also a possibility that we should be very worried about. And another situation, another proxy war of that nature, like Syria, is not good for the United States. It is not good for the region. It is not good for the world.
But one thing we haven't discussed in all this is the mineral situation, the oil. The oil situation has to play into this. Whenever you hear politicians say, the United States has a vested interest in this, doesn't vested interest mean oil? Am I right or am I wrong?
It includes oil, and oil is, unfortunately, protecting sources of oil is in our national interest, as much as people might not like it or might not want to say it.
I think that's true, but not to the same extent that we had in the past, even a decade ago.
Certainly.
We're now producing a lot more oil than we used to domestically. And part of the issue is Keystone XL. I think we could, be bringing oil down from Canada to the U.S. to use instead of bringing that over from Iraq and unstable countries in OPEC and the Middle East. But there's been totally inexplicable delays from the president on deciding on that. Whether it's yes or no, it'd be good to have some kind of certainty so that consumers and producers can plan ahead for the future.
Okay. Our next question is from Minnie Oliver, and she said, like we had been talking about before, Miss USA never said self-defense is the only solution to rape. It's responsible to defend yourself from criminals while working to eliminate crime. Can we all agree on that?
I think that was very well said.
Yeah.
Good.
I think we're all in that place.
Right.
Okay. Well, now it's time for the most underreported story of the week. Who would like to go first?
Well, actually, I have 2. I don't mean to impinge on anyone's time.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, the floor is mine. Good, thank you. Because I'm a class individual, I'll be brief. Couple things. A graduate student at Princeton University undertook this very interesting study, produced an interesting study involving economics, straight men and gay men. According to his study, gay black males tend to be discriminated the least in terms of white males, white straight males, black straight males, or gay white males, gay black males. And it's a very interesting study. Black gay males apparently are on par with their white counterparts in terms of salary. Okay, and why, according to his study, is because gay black males are viewed as the least threatening. Okay? Therefore, an employer more than likely would give a gay black male a salary in tune to his white counterpart, which is very interesting. Black straight males tend to be the ones who are hurt the most in terms of salary in regards to white counterparts, et cetera, the way they're viewed. Why? Because black straight males, according to his study at Princeton, black straight males are viewed as the most threatening. And so that's an interesting study in terms of sexuality and men, black and white. And another one is uncovered story is a group of guys in New Mexico were out having a bachelor party, and while they were out on the grounds in New Mexico, they discovered a fossil. And the Las Cruces Sun News reported that the fossil is 3 million years old. And they were out having a good time, and one of them saw this tusk sticking out of the ground. And of course, that raised your curiosity. You go investigate, check it out. Oh, we have something here. They alerted the paleontologist from one of the nearby colleges, and the paleontologist discovered that it was a fossil that's 3 million years old. It's called the Stegomastodon fossil.
Wow.
Yes. So that's my two, and
Very
I'll let it
interesting.
go.
Okay.
I just before I came here, I heard a story on NPR, which I just found fascinating. And if you don't believe in climate change, I think this it really drives the point home. California's drought is now so severe and has been ongoing for so long that they are considering pumping water backwards in their aqueducts. So California pumps water or lets water flow from the mountains and from the north, where there's lots of water generally, to drier areas. It's a project that is one of the greatest public works projects that the world has ever seen, certainly the United States, amongst the biggest we've had. And that it is so bad that now they're going to pump water backwards uphill to serve these now drought-stricken areas. Just is amazing, and it just shows you that climate change is having a major effect, and we should all be worried about that. Limes are finally back down in price now that the Mexican cartels have settled down, but we're going to see some food price increases if California's in that much trouble.
So the World Cup is underway in Brazil, which is very exciting. I'm a big soccer fan, so I'm happy about that. And last week, a report came out with new allegations about bribes regarding the 2022 Qatar World Cup. But part of the bigger issue, I think, with Qatar is the migrant workers that they're bringing in to construct a bunch of new stadiums. They basically had almost no stadiums ready for the World Cup. So Qatar is a nation of only about 200,000 citizens, and they're bringing in at least 500,000 migrant workers. And Jeremy Schaap of ESPN went there to do a short documentary, and he found that these hundreds of thousands of migrant workers were being really treated like second-class citizens. They arrived in the country from places like Nepal and India, and they were just living in squalor, and they had their contracts ripped up right as they got there. And they're not allowed to leave the country because you have to have your exit visa approved by your employer. And so a conservative estimate from the International Trade Union Confederation showed that they think at least 4,000 migrant workers will die as a result of the poor conditions there. And there's been hundreds of deaths already.
Whoa.
So at that point, you kind of start to ask yourself, what cost is worth
The World Cup.
What cost
Is
is
the
that
World
worth?
Cup worth it?
Yeah.
Right.
And
And plus, you
it's-
have those protests, right, Jason?
In Brazil, right?
Yeah. People are protesting. What was it? Like $11 billion was spent by Brazil to prepare for the World Cup.
Right.
But yet people don't have adequate housing and adequate hospitals. And
Yeah,
all
in
of
Qatar
that.
they're actually spending $200 billion, but
Yeah.
I mean, they have oil money, but then still they're the ones who are
Yeah.
constructing the living conditions for these for the migrant workers. So I'm thinking that they should have the World Cup instead. I think it's shameful that FIFA hasn't at least threatened to investigate that.
It seems it's a
and
very
hold it
real
somewhere else.
possibility
Yeah.
with the other investigations of FIFA corruption and bribery that may have been involved in the decision for that. So I think we face a very real possibility of them losing the cup.
It also makes you wonder, with the Olympics coming up in 2016 again in Brazil, would the IOC consider taking the Olympics away?
No, I think finally a lot of the infrastructure they started to build for the World Cup will be done by then. So that'll all be said. It's certainly not done now.
That's for
Maybe
sure.
2016.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us and contributing to the discussion. That's all the time we have for this week. Thanks for watching The Square Circle. We'll see you next week.